Yeah, no, I mean that's the way that, you know, I look at that. I mean, like, dude, I was sick last weekend. I mean, I was like super out of it, and I remember even during that time I was just praying, and I remember distinctly praying even like on Monday when I was super out of it. I remember praying, just saying like, thank you for allowing me to know you just a little bit better in these last couple of days.
That's super cool, man. Damn. I look at, I mean, it's so interesting because such a different method than I have, but it brings us to the same place. Like, because when I suffer, it goes through this mental process of, first I'm dreaming, and that's why I'm suffering.
Right.
I'm not thinking of the moment. I'm suffering. And then I realize I'm suffering. And then I rationalize, okay, suffering is a mental game. Like the pain, all this stuff, the suffering is just the belief system I'm putting on this moment.
Right.
And then I realize that God, right, doesn't suffer. I know God because God is beyond the thinking mental shit is real, because he is just God. He knows what's up. He is bliss, complete. And so then I realize that, and I'm like, okay, I know who God is, and I just think of God, and I go to God and focus on God.
Yeah.
But I have to recognize I'm suffering first. And once I recognize it, then I can point my attention to God. And then I could still feel pain. I could still feel emotion and stuff, but I'm not forming a mental loop where it's like, fuck this sucks, you know?
No, and that's exactly it, right? I mean, it's very easy to do that, but and the thing is, like I said, like even in all that, like, I mean, me doing that didn't make me stop feeling like crap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, you know, here's the thing, like, I can either, it's like, you know, you hear when people talk about like, oh yeah, you know, Lord, give me the wisdom to see to understand the things that I can, change the things I can't, and the strength to change what I can.
Nice.
You know, it's like
That's
it's like when you talk about that. I mean, it's like things I can't change the fact that I'm sick right now. I can't. If I could, I would snap a finger and I would, you know, feel good, but I can't do that. You know what I mean? And so in that method, it's just that, you know, like, it just kind of goes back to, this sounds kind of corny, but I'm sure we've all heard the phrase of like, well, you know, everything happens for a reason. You know, I mean, like. And I just think that
it's the most common thing said ever.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's so cliche, but I think that is really just one thing that you have to think about, is that, like, you know, we are given everything that we have as we're here and we're breathing and we're on the right side of the ground every day. We're blessed to be able to do that. It's like,
amen, brother.
Everything is a blessing, including the suffering that I experience here on earth, because that allows me to be closer in my faith.
That's amazing. Nice. I like that outlook. That's great.
So
that's great, man. I don't have a positive outlook. Like, to me, that seems like a positive outlook on suffering. Like, you can suffer and you can be close to God. For me, it's like, if suffering wasn't there, I'd be okay with that.
I would too. I don't like feeling pain, bro. I'm not a sadist, dog. I don't, you know, I ain't got Miss Smith at home, like, you know, with like some whips and chains or anything, or masochist. Yeah.
That's kind of what it reminds me of. Like, the more you could suffer, the closer you are to God.
Well, the thing is, it's not about like, oh, I feel pain. I mean, it's just
I'm pretty. So you do what you
will.
Sorry, Logan. I didn't mean to blow that in your face,
know, I'm
brother.
getting all hot. The sober guy's getting hotboxed over here. It's okay.
Bad, brother.
I can hold the breath. I can hold my breath for a long time. So I'm like a Navy SEAL.
Oh shit.
But I just, it's not a matter of like I'm going to purposely put myself through suffering. It's just the times that God deems that I need to be put through that.
Mm-hmm. See, I don't. Why? That is a weird question. Why the suffering? You ever ask that question?
I mean, it depends where the suffering comes from. I mean, I don't think God purposely puts me through suffering, but I mean, the thing is that there are ill intentions about the world, right? And that we are granted free will here on earth. I mean, we all make decisions, you know, based around like what our own self-interests are. Like, you know, a prime example is just like if you go back to Genesis, right? You know, you have Adam and Eve who are gifted paradise.
Okay. Yeah,
Right.
I understand that. Yeah.
right? And then so they eat of the tree of knowledge, and then
Yeah.
because Eve was, seduced by the serpent, and then she gives it to Adam, and then God goes to Adam, and then
Wow.
and then what ends up happening is everybody like diverts as soon as like they are entranced by like everything that they know,
Yeah.
and the ability to know, everything falls apart. It starts operating for self-interest. Like for example, like what ended up happening is literally like God goes to Adam, and Adam's hiding. He says, "Why are you hiding?" He said, "I'm naked." And God said, "Who told you you were naked?" And then God says, "So you ate of the fruit of the tree I told you not to eat from," because that's the only way you would know that.
Dumb fuck. Sorry, dude. Like,
But I mean, like, you think about it though. That's exactly it. And like, in what it goes to, and like, it didn't go to any sort of self-righteous point, like where we want to, right? By our own free will, you took that, and then once you have the more knowledge you have, essentially, you become more self-vested interest in like just taking care of yourself. Because what's the first thing he says? He doesn't say, "I'm sorry." Doesn't become repentant. What does he say? "It was that woman you put in here with me. She did it. She gave it to me. She made me do it."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And then he says to Eve, why would you do this?
was that wrong of Adam to blame Eve?
Yeah, why couldn't he just repent?
See, from what I'm seeing though, is all the stuff Adam is doing, there's no free will there. He is now, the moment they took that bite of the apple, started a chain reaction, like just a runoff math equation. If you if you go like pi, even the millionth decibel on pi is still going to be the same millionth decibel. Like they just started.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
All the way to this point where that's where it's God looking at something. The thing he's looking at thinks it has free will, but God knows that it's all determined. That
It's
he's
not all
looking at a
determined.
math equation.
I don't think that it's all that. I mean, it's literally he gave you free will because he said, like, literally, like, you can stay here, but the only condition is don't eat anything from that tree over there.
So in there's a book by Thomas Campbell, who's a physicist, and it's called My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything. And from his book comes the idea of decision space, and it's based on having free will. So one has free will, but at any one moment you only have so many choices you can make.
Right.
So that's your decision space, and then the quality of your being is the thing that chooses the free will. The choose from the access that free will gives you. Your quality of being is the one that says this or that.
Yeah.
And by you choosing, it's like you're trying to lessen your suffering with every choice. But suffering is inherent in the system.
So wouldn't then suffering dictate how things pan out, right? Because more or less suffering would base that beingness to choose one path or the other, just more where it's leaning. It's like suffering's a wind and
Well,
it's just going with the opposite of the wind or
I
something.
mean, if you're a hedonist, you would always go towards the thing that is less suffering, right?
Correct.
But that's not always their best choice. Like, it's not always the most loving choice, which I believe is the best choice, is love, because that is the most efficient way to live.
So you're on board with this?
Yeah, no, I 100%. I mean, the thing is like you make these decisions, right? You make all these decisions, and a lot of times, let's be honest, everybody's for the most part, we're out for ourselves. That is the natural human instinct and way that most people operate, right? And so a lot of that is caused by temptations that happen, the spirits around us, the devil. I mean, that's what happened with Eve. You know what I mean? She allowed herself to be seduced. In the same way we allow.
That's an interesting. Yeah.
So I mean, like that's really where it comes from. You're asking me where suffering comes from. This is why I kind of brought it back to that, right? Is because essentially, like we have temptations that we follow day by day, where it's just like, oh, this is just so much easier over here. Just take this way, take this way. This is better for you, right? Than what you. Sorry, I thought I had that on mute. So we make an obvious decision whether or not we can take the harder path, right, the more righteous path, or we can take the easier path.
Okay.
And a lot of times when we take the easier path, what ends up happening? The people around us have to suffer for that. So that's why there's a lot of temptation to not necessarily take the more righteous path, right? And quite frankly, we live in a very secular society right now where that is going to be the majority decision. And like you said, but that starts chain reactions when people make these decisions. So then that increases suffering in the world, and it's due to like the temptation of sin that we're all kind of cursed to like be tempted with throughout our lives. You know?
Yeah, because like how much of the conditioning we have influences our decision making, whether we choose one path or the other, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, like,
it's even just the fact that we're human, biologically human, that changes. I mean, we're making computers. We decide to sit down and do this. If we weren't human,
yeah, why else would you do it?
Yes.
And that's the thing. Like you look at when you look at it, right? Like what we were talking about. We're coming in here and you're doing all these things. You're asking me, like, you know, where's this come from? That's not of God when you have that suffering. That's the sin that is present in the world and the temptations that come before us, and when we choose to sin and we choose to do that, and that populates the suffering in the others around us.
yeah, I'm totally down with that. I'm totally down with that. It's from that first bite of the apple created sin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the thing is that knowledge, it translates to technology, right?
Oh, 100%.
So if knowledge is how to create and use tools better, it's human to think that the tool, like my life being physically easier, is gonna lessen my suffering. But what happens when you start eliminating the physical side, like you have computers and you have agriculture and all that stuff to make your physical life easy, then you're just left with the thing that's actually responsible for suffering, which is your being. And it's just so, I just laughed in the middle of that, because you're like, oh, it's like the pursuit of knowledge that allows sin in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just laughed at that because it's like, oh yeah, like we have all these computers and shit, and like, what does it do for us?
Yeah, it automates it, and literally, like, what ends up happening, you think about it, like, okay, so yeah, it makes your life easier to do that. But what ends up happening the more we automate stuff?
You get left with.
Yeah, people become outdated. They become outmoded.
I think we're left with most of these layers are built by our ego, so that it doesn't have to like actually look at the shadow and deal with the problem, the fear,
Yeah.
right? So the ego says, like, if I just improve on my physical world, then that will keep me busy long enough until I die, so I don't have to face the fear.
Exactly. You know, and that's the thing. Like, we numb ourselves out to things. We envelop ourselves in all these different things. I mean, if you think about it too, like, just looking at, like, you take any computer, right? Or nowadays, even our phones, right? Essentially, what ends up happening? We're literally just sitting here going down rabbit holes half the time, and you're stuck on a screen. And the next thing you know, you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram, like, your attention span is just gone, it's just shot. And people did that, why? So they could make money off of you going on reels. Meanwhile, it's like that was for their benefit and for their comfort. Meanwhile, now we have people that can't even focus. They have such a short attention span. They have an inability to focus anymore.
Wow.
You think about it, like how that garden story start. He turned to them and he said, all you have to do, you can have paradise and never want for anything in your life. Just don't eat over there. Because it's corruption. Having all that knowledge corrupts you. You know?
Yeah, I would.
Sorry, just one quote. Not a quote. I'll butcher it. But
Go ahead.
this kid who's I went to the Stronger Men's Conference in
Right.
Missouri with Magala doing a halftime show, and one of our chaperones, huh?
With Driscoll.
Yeah, which
That guy's such a... You know what? I'm not gonna go in there. It's fine. Go ahead. Go ahead. I got my own opinions about the guy, but go ahead.
So, but one of our chaperones, he was a 20-year-old guy who's just doing his missionary work. Essentially.
Right.
He's going through college. He's going to go help people build wells or whatever. But something he said that like stuck out at me was I was like, I asked him about AI. I was like, what does your church think about AI? And he was like, all tools befall man. Is that something like that?
Yes.
Do you know that quote?
It's something like that. I mean, I'm not 100% on it,
So-
but I'm familiar with what you were referencing.
So essentially, every tool that man uses will eventually be used for his own demise.
Correct.
So that's like that.
Interesting.
And that's what I'm getting at. But no,
Yeah.
that's a lot more eloquently put than what I was driving at. But yeah, no, that's exactly what I mean.